Good morning, everybody. Sorry, good afternoon even. What a start. Today we're going to do a webinar for about 30 minutes, and the focus is on what Dynamics 365 can do for your retail business. So just to introduce the people we've got on the call from HSO, is myself, Hector, a sales director. I've worked with retail systems for pretty much all of my career for about 20 years and spent the last 10 years with Microsoft. I'm joined by my colleague, Pete. Pete, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Pete Sharp, Solution Architect with HSO. I've been working across retail, both on the customer side, where I went through the Dynamics AX implementation of crew clothing across the retail estate. And I've spent the last few years at HSO working on our retail projects and on our development of retail products.
So just in terms of HSO, very briefly for those of you who don't know us, so I've got a slide that builds. We're basically totally focused on Dynamics and Dynamics 365. We've spent many years on Dynamics AX before that became Dynamics 365. We have there's about 150 people in the UK focused on that solution, and then similar sort of significant amount of people in Holland, in Germany, smaller in the States, and also in the Far East. Both are great places to work, and regularly in the top 1% and the Partner Advisory Council worldwide for Microsoft, which enables us to sort of work with them to make sure get the input from the ground and make sure that Microsoft are going in the right direction from a product strategy point of view. Some of the customers we work with, you'll see down at the bottom, is not an exclusive, sort of a complete list, but you can see there you've got people, you've got innovative online type businesses like Trainline, you've got builders, merchants like Grafton and Leyland, decorators, merchants, you've got furniture businesses like Alping, footwear businesses like Hotter and Russell and Bromley. You've got healthcare products like Liberty and Rituals, as well as some food businesses as well, and within that, car aftermarket and various fashion businesses like Jules and Liberty. So there's a real mix across our portfolio, and I guess what we're looking to do is enable people to work with Dynamics 365 in a way that fits them and get the most out of the innovation and capability that Microsoft bring to that product, and also the surrounding technologies like Office 365 and Azure and Power BI, etc. So the intention today was to try and look at how Dynamics 365 can help in the current in this sort of current retail situation, and we're acutely conscious that there's an awful lot of pressures facing retail at the moment. You've got in no particular order with the Brexit situation, the cost of goods has risen significantly because of the value of the pound. And yet at the same time, consumer debt is at an all-time high, and it's highly competitive out there, so there's not really the scope to increase the prices to bridge that margin. On top of that, you got wage pressures, national living wage, national minimum wage always on the up, pension regulations, and also now the sort of equal pay lawsuits that are also taking place. On top of that, there's all the data and GDPR compliance, which from what we're hearing, that's I think retail is one of the most difficult places to be compliant with that, just because the amount of parties that can be involved to get goods to consumer. And there seems to be a growing sense that there'll be sort of no win, no fee legal firms who will be doing everything in their powers to try and go after retailers that aren't compliant. And then on top of all of that, you've got the online retailers just becoming increasingly powerful. People like Amazon is obviously the poster child, but there's plenty of others out there that are doing a lot, and all of these things are adding to customer expectations, and people are just consumers are just expecting things and expecting every retailer to have the level of service, the level of innovation, the level of convenience that they can get from from some of the giant businesses. And you've only got to see, I mean, from my own experience, just even being able to pay by touch, introduced a couple of years ago, and pretty much within 18 months, you sort of, if you're buying a coffee and they don't accept it, you sort of wonder how seriously they're taking you. But obviously behind the scenes there's a cost involved, and that just an example: click and collect, order in store, you know, being able to order and do everything on your phone, all of that sort of stuff people just are starting to just expect as standard. And obviously that has a cost. So I think what we were really looking to do today was to try and look at okay, given all of those pressures, how can Dynamics 365 enable you to basically operate more efficiently given those pressures, you know, enable you to innovate, manage your stock harder, by which we mean, you know, either increase the turn or make sure there's more full price and less stuff discounted, because clearly that's eating margins and also cannibalizing full stock sales, and really just, you know, stay ahead and do all of that whilst remaining compliant and able to, you know, ultimately serve the customer in the best way that you can. So I'm going to hand over to Peter Sharp, who's going to talk around D365 and step you through a few of those topics.
Thanks very much. So I'm going to look at two main areas today. We're going to pick on a back office example and look at how we can use analytics much more effectively within the solution, and how HSO built on some of the technology capability that Microsoft have given us. And we're going to take a look at some of the retail store enhancements that Microsoft continue to deliver as part of their new monthly update cycle for the retail development piece, and how some of that's helping to ease the flow against customer expectations for that in-store click and collect experience. So first of all, we're going to look at the idea of using analytics much more thoroughly as part of a business process. If we look at the sort of traditional elements of a merchandising process, it's often quite disparate across the different elements. So it's not unusual to see people taking lots of data out into Excel, using that to start to drive a list of products that they think are slow sellers that they maybe need to work on, or perhaps a list of items coming up to the end of season that they need to do a markdown for, or move some stock around to consolidate it and give themselves a better chance of sale. This initial list, this point that you're sort of trying to use to decide what to do, might get fed with information from reports, but it's all quite manual to take that information, gather it up, and start making some decisions around your data. Once you've taken those decisions, generally you're plugging that into your system of record. You're taking your decisions about marking products down, and you're going through and you'll enter a few new prices. And if things are working well, maybe you can do some bulk actions to apply those. And then finally, once those are approved and people have agreed to the prices going out and you've sent them to the website and the point of sale, you're back in your BI tool looking at the results and hoping you made the right choices, watching for the numbers over the next few days and weeks, or past few days and weeks if your BI takes a while to update, and trying to see what effect you might have had. So we wanted to take some of the Microsoft technology and see how well we could join this process up and bring it entirely within a single solution. And rather than have people running around looking at a piece of paper over here and then making an operational decision over there, we wanted to bring all of that together and really put the information in front of people at the point where they're making some critical business choices. So we want to take this idea of building a list of products, identifying a selection of items or categories that you need to work with, defining that list, creating proposals of what to do with it within the system, all using your operational tools and your single functional workspace to do that, and then to take action directly from this. Once you've got approval and the price list is good to go, or the minimums are set for replen, action that within the system. You don't need to go somewhere else and repeat any actions. You don't need to do any manual work to do this. You can make use of this operational platform that's running across your business to deliver this. And then, of course, within this same platform, you have both the actions you've taken and the outcomes in terms of your sales coming in or your stock moving around, and you can see the effects and run through this cycle again. So we've done this using something called Analytical Workspaces, which development Microsoft have been building on over the past 12 months or so. That's a good sign. And it's a way of, way of embedding analytics within a process and using Power BI as their data platform within Dynamics as a tool. Right, excuse me a moment while I make up for Microsoft's PowerPoint stability. So analytical workspaces have been deployed to bring all of this together, allow you to see some data, use that as real-time analytics to analyze what's going on and identify trends, as well as simply present values, and then let you work through that data and do something with it. What we've tried to do is take this concept and develop it in something that HSO is calling Powerrita, taking the functions and the technologies Microsoft give us and using that to build a set of tools that takes the data, takes the analytics and works it through into the operational processes, whether that's doing markdowns, running your promotions, profiling your stores or producing allocations. It's about that 360-degree product process all within one solution. So on that note, I shall swap across to our Microsoft Dynamics 365 environment we're going to have a look at today, and we're going to run through this process of identifying some products that we think need some work and that we're going to do a bit of analysis on, and then pushing that through a markdown process to see how we could reset the prices, get that approved and push it down to the stores. So for those of you who aren't too familiar with Dynamics 365, this is my landing page when I come into work. It's very busy because I can see all of the system, but what I'm looking at are a series of workspaces, a series of areas where I can go and do a task, whether that's going and doing some merchandising, whether that's doing some buying around purchase order confirmation, whether that's an engagement with a supplier through some of my vendor management portals. It's a function delivered in an area. And I'm going to start today looking at my action lists, this concept of working out what's important to go and have a look at. And I'm going to do a new action list. I'm going to call it action list 05, and this is going to be a markdown proposal, and it's going to be a one-off. I'm not going to, this isn't going to be a recurring one where I just add any new products as they drop into my bottom sellers, for example. This is just going to be a one-off exercise. So from my markdown proposal, I jump into my analytical workspace. And this is where we've combined a lot of the data coming out of our stock systems and our sales ledgers. And we've built a set of merchandising cubes that combine this data into a useful set of measures and understandable sort of metrics for the merchandiser. So if you can see down at the bottom of the screen here, we have a number of elements that will look pretty familiar around median week sell through, the stock turn, weeks covering the business, days since last sold, and of course margin and sales information. And the idea with this is that I can use all of this rich information to identify what products I'm going to be looking at. So I can have a granular table down here at the bottom of the screen, which is giving me lots of values, but I've also got all of my different category informations, product sets, seasonal information and vendor information available for me to use in this filter. And these lists aren't just a simple sort of static pull through of data, they can be quite analytical. So I can be filtering based on all of these metrics, or actually I can even go down to the level of starting to bring in machine learning based R scripts to forecast my sales going forward. This one occasionally takes a moment to load at the moment. But here I can say, well, actually, I don't just want to be planning purely on the basis of what I've done in the past and making some assumptions about the future. I think I can systemize that. So I could determine a machine learning algorithm that would use the weather to do a near-term forecast over the next 3 to 5 days and plug that in against sales and use the previous history to make an actual forecast over the next couple of periods. This I can then again build into my selection of which products I think might sell better, which I might need to mark down to help improve my sell-through rates. So throughout all of these, what I'm doing is starting to analyze the data I've got, work within that, and select a number of products coming out of it. And as you see, as I select each one of these, the system is getting told about which products I've identified to work with. And at any point, oops, excuse me, I can go through and I can view the lines against this selection. If I've managed to select any, I think this is a moment to jump out to one that I prepared earlier, excuse me. Nothing like the system reloading in the middle of a demo. But the idea is I can go through here, filter my selection of products and pull these out into a set of lines and create this idea of an action list, which of course is going to refuse to work mid-webinar. Let's assume for the moment I've built up a list of products and I want to do something with that action list. So I've taken my markdown proposal, I've taken my provisional markdown on my end of season sales, and I'm going to do something with it. So I'm going to move from my action list function into the concept of a markdown. So for a markdown, we've got a couple of things going on. If you're doing an actual reduction in the retail price, you want to be able to put a proposal together that says this is the cost, this is our reduction in overall retail valuation of our stock, and this is how I'm going to apply it to my products. This is the effect on the margin, and finally, if that's approved, this is now sent through and scheduled for my price changes, making available was now pricing on the web and the pods and the history and all the rest of it. So for an action list, I'm going to take all of my items that I've produced from my sort of analysis through the Power BI, and I'm going to have a number of metrics available against this to start working out what I want to do with the price. So you can see all of these elements that I was using at the start of the process to look at my list, these live values that I can see against sales volume and stock turn, and now all available as my filters when I start to decide what I want to do with the actual price. So if I take filters on these, I then have my simple operations that say this is 20% off, or £10 off, or a reduction of X against these items, and apply it to the filter. If I change these, for example, to a 30% off, I say, right, actually, I'll apply this to all products. I'm then getting a revision for my margin information, and I can see the effect and the new price that's going to have. So at this point, I've taken an action list and I've created a markdown proposal. I haven't done anything with this price yet. I've simply been able to apply the price functions, see what would be the impact of this in terms of my retail valuation. And I can then, if I'm happy with this proposal, decide either at a reviewer level, analysis through Power BI, or finally, I can submit this off for approval. So hopefully, despite one or two gremlins, you get the idea of how we can take this rich data that we've got out of the system, and without simply having to chuck it out and ask somebody to go and look at it at the relevant time and make some meaningful decisions off the back of it, we can put that information in front of them, let them work through it in a system with no duplication of effort, and allow them to push that all the way through into finally actioning prices and posting them off to the tills at the end of the process. And that's just one example of sort of how we take this data through from start to finish. So the other area I wanted to take a little look at today was the retail point of sale. Well, we have all of this going on in the back office, driving the product out to the stores and setting the prices and hopefully largely getting that right. We also have to deal with all of the processes for how the customer wants to receive their stock, whether that's simply out of convenience or because we didn't manage to have it where we thought we needed it in the first place. And a lot of this comes down to the experience in store, both for the staff and the customer, and that interaction between the two of them when they're looking at items or trying to find availability. So Microsoft have been putting a lot of work into the development of the POS and into the building of the functions that really sort of give you quite a slick process through. As Hector was saying, rather than it simply incurring costs for all of these items, you want to be using your operational efficiencies to try and minimize the time it takes, reduce the amount of stock that's held up in the system or moving around multiple times, and try and do things once and do them right. So to do this, we're going to have a bit of a look at the point of sale and a look at the sort of remote ordering and collection in store processes. And there are a few new functions in particular that we'll look at to do that. The stock matrix, some of the notifications, and a bit of the order flow for how I manage an order. So we're going to start in the Microsoft Retail point of sale. You can see I'm running it here in a browser. This is our cloud POS that obviously will run in any device that's got a decent web browser. We can run it on a tablet or a normal point of sale as well. So it's very flexible for how we go about using it in store. And you can also have an Android or an iOS version for it if you just want it on a phone to manage stock or orders out the back. And we're going to have a little look at how we might search for an item and go about fulfilling an order. So if we have somebody coming into store, they've found a product and they've managed to come up to an assistant and say, I like this, but I can't find it in my size. This, if it was taken on a tablet, is something that's very easy to go and look at the item, understand what they're looking for, and then very clearly, immediately be able to see my stock availability across the store. Not just understanding what I have available right now, because hopefully I keep my stock floor well stocked, so if the customer can't find it, I don't have it. But also what I've got coming in. It might be that I've got a few on order, and in a couple of days that'll be available for them again. So here the customer is going to look, and unfortunately the particular size they're after, this dark grey long 40, we don't have in stock. It's not available to us. So I can go now, I can have a look at the availability of what's coming in, but I can see I don't have any of that. Or I can simply go and say, okay, where else do I have it in my estate? I don't have any, but if another store does, that's fine. That's all I need at this stage. And I can see that Boston's got some. So taking that, if you look down in the bottom right of the screen, you can see I've then got the option showing the customer on this tablet where the store is and perhaps directing them to it if it's convenient to pick it up. And from there I could go to pick up in store, or in this case, Houston, Boston, I think that might be a bit of a stretch. I'm going to ship the product to them. So at this point I can select ship. It's going to pick up the Boston store as the shipping from address, and then I can jump into my customer search, find myself, and add myself into this transaction as the customer that's going to receive this for shipping. And I think I'll have it by next day air, and I'll pay the £10 charge that goes with that. So now I've got into my basket, I've selected the item, I'm quite happy that it's getting shipped from another store and I can see that, and so I'm ready to check out. And maybe I've got a couple of items that I might want to carry out with me at the same time. So I'm then going to say, all right, actually these two items perhaps I take with me, whereas this one I'm going to get shipped out. So just to check the shipping, oops, excuse me, shipping on that one. And you can see then against these items, I have this one shipped next day from Boston, and I have these ones, which at the moment I'm going to carry out with me. So let's say I'm going to take that one straight out, and actually that one I've decided I don't need anymore. It's the wrong size, so I'll just take that line off the order. So as I check out, I'm ready to go carry out the polo shirt that I'd already found in my size, and I'm placing the order for that suit to be delivered straight from the Boston store. So at this point, as a customer, I'm done. I'm going to go home and wait for the item to arrive. As a company, I now need to make sure I get that item to the customer as quickly as possible, and to reserve that unit of stock before somebody else, either in Boston or looking at the stock position in Boston, can go and take it. So I need to push a notification out to the Boston store. If you see up here, I've got a little notification icon that's lit up and is telling me I've got something to do. So if I was in a store receiving some orders, then I would be able to see this notification popping up on any of the point of sale devices we had across the store. And I'd be able to see what sort of orders I had and what volumes and what I needed to do with them. So if I was having some ship from store available from here, I could go in and see an order and then immediately start to decide what to do with it. Now, simply pushing an order to a store is a really good start. You've taken the demand in one location, you've kept the customer happy by locating some stock, and you've put the demand out to the other location where there's some stock available. But you can't be certain that they're actually going to have any. If it's a busy Saturday afternoon, all the staff might be busy serving, and perhaps that order is not going to get looked at. If you've got a very low stock level, it might be that actually your stock's incorrect and that unit's gone, or that it's currently with a customer and they're just about to buy it. You probably can't take it off them and pick it for a different order. So we need this idea of accepting or rejecting an order. And if we're going to reject the order, we need some method of processing that and popping it out to another location. And that's the concept of order management. But today we're going to stick with quite a simple example where I say, actually, if I do have the stock, then what I'm trying to do is just manage through very simple warehouse processes around picking an order and having it ready for delivery. That way, when a customer comes into it, either I'm posting it out or a customer comes into the store, and I can immediately see these orders and straight away action them from within the solution. Of course, any of these, if a customer is coming into the store and you're doing a pickup, you want that ability to continue to sell to them. So of course you could build a basket. If it's simply going straight out somebody's home, you just want the other store to process it through and ship it out with as little effort from the staff in that store as possible, and as little cost to you as a business for serving that demand. So that was a very quick introduction to some of the latest features from the Microsoft point of sale. This is an area that they're working at very hard, and we see developments coming through each month. So as they continue to develop this order management and the ideas of how I really effectively use my stock within a store estate, we'll get a lot more to talk about in this area. And just before I wrap up, there was just one last area that I wanted to touch on, as it's becoming ever more pertinent, is what we're doing to manage the particular compliance requirements of GDPR coming up at the end of May. And as an operational system, and one that can have a lot of CRM related data in it as well, Microsoft Dynamics is a key part of any company's response to GDPR. And as such, Microsoft have, again, been doing a lot to ensure that they provide a compliant platform and the tools you need to do this reasonably effectively within the business. So while there are elements out there around the Microsoft Trust Center where you can go to start identifying what risks you might have in your business, and there are a number of tools such as Microsoft Intune or some of the data management pieces for trying to control access and protect your data. Within Microsoft Dynamics, we have a slightly more functional requirement, and this is around the people search reports. So this ability to go in, search based on a name or some relevant customer information, and pull out all the different entities and all of the different data sets that have components of this personal data on it. And to do that in a way that maintains an audit of who's asked for it, what I've delivered it, and what action has been taken, whether that's simply to deliver a report or to clean up behind ourselves and delete all of the data, and to do this in a way that gives us that full track record of what's going on. So we'll probably see a few more announcements between now and the 25th of May as Microsoft continues to develop on all of this. But as it stands at the moment, we have a number of functional tools within the platform, as well as the certifications around the platform and the data storage itself. So on that note, thank you very much for your time and attention.